Hey friends, happy Monday. Today we're going to be talking about topic 3 on solving linear systems of equations. We are going to introduce a new method. So far last week you guys did graphing, you did substitution, and today we're going to introduce a new one, elimination. Now, graphing, the downside of graphing was, well, what if we don't have graph paper? Or what if we are straight line challenged and are having a hard time drawing a straight line and finding a perfect intersection? So graphing kind of has its downfalls there. Substitution. We loved problems with substitution that looked like this. That we had an x that was by itself and we could substitute that in here. Or this one, x was almost really close to being by itself and we could substitute that in after we moved over that y. But with the problems today, I want you to take a look at, well, this first one is pretty easy. We could solve for x or y in one of those. But in examples 2, 3, and 4, it's going to be a little bit harder to solve for x. If I solve for x in this one, you're going to end up with this equation. X equals -4 plus 7y all divided by 6. That's not going to make for a very friendly substitution. So what we're going to be doing is elimination. And the key to elimination is to start off with our equations that look like they are perfectly lined up. Right here we have x's that are matched up, y's that are matched up. We have an equal sign that's in the same spot. And then we have our numbers on the other side. So we're going to be going through elimination today. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start with an easy example here. We're going to start with this example where we have x plus y equals 3 and x minus y equals -9. So we have two numbers that add up to 3, and then when I subtract them I get a -9. So that's kind of a clue that maybe we're going to have a negative number in there somewhere. We're adding up to 3, and then when we subtract them we get -9. So here's what I see to start off this equation. X and an x, those don't really cancel out. But a positive y and a negative y, those cancel each other out. So here's what I'm going to do. Since I know a negative y and a positive y cancel each other out, I'm going to combine these two equations to come up with a new equation. All right, so hang in there with me. If I combine x and an x, well, x plus x is equal to 2x. Well, you guys just told me if I add up a positive y and a negative y, well, those would cancel each other out. And then finally, 3 plus -9, well, 3 minus 9 is a -6. And wow, that looks like a really easy equation to solve for x. So notice, x plus x is equal to 2x. Positive y and negative y, well, that cancels each other out. I don't even have to write a y there. And 3 minus 9 is -6. So when I solve this one, divide by 2, x equals -3. Beautiful, x equals -3. Now remember, with a system of equations, we are not done with just one answer. We need both an x and a y. Now, you guys have a choice. You could choose either of these equations to deal with. I don't care which one you do. I'm going to go ahead and choose this first equation up here. So I know that x plus y equals 3. Well, my new piece of information is x is -3. So if I set x equal to -3, -3 plus y equals 3. And if I add 3, I get y equals 6. Cool. Now, some rebels might say, okay, cool, we just solved for y on that one. However, what if I were to have chosen the second equation here? Well, if I would have chosen the second equation here, x minus y equals -9. Well, my new information was that x is equal to -3, so I have -3 minus y equals -9. If I add 3 and add 3, I have -y equals -6. And sure enough, if I divide by -1, we get our same answer. Y equals 6. So once you solve for your first variable, it doesn't really matter which So at this point, you are able to check your answer by graphing. If I check this in with Desmos, if I say, hey, I want one number plus another to equal 3, and x minus y to equal -9, sure enough, our solution is x equals -3, y equals 6, and that is our solution for example 1. All right, let's go ahead and move on to example 2. Example 2 looks like this. A little bit trickier here. We have 6x minus 7y equals -4, and -4x minus 7y is equal to 26. Now, our x's are matched up, our y's are matched up, and our constants are on the other side of the equation. I see one issue though. A -y or -7y and a -7y will not cancel out. If I do that, a -7 and a -7 would be a -14. So ideally what I want to do is I want to change one of these into a positive 7y. Now I'm just going to choose this first equation, and I'm going to multiply through by -1 here. And here's why I'm going to do that. Well, if I were to distribute this, -1 times 6x will be -6x. -1 times -7y gets me my positive 7y. And finally, -1 times -4, -1 times -4, that will be a positive 4. So I have now changed this first equation into something that is going to cancel out. Now, one thing that I do just so I don't get myself confused is as soon as I do that multiplication, I go ahead and cross it off, just so I don't accidentally use that for something. All right, so now we are ready for our elimination step. So what I have here is I have a -4x and a -6x. If I combine those, I have a -10x. A -7y and a positive 7y, that cancels out, that's nothing. And then equals, well, 26 and 4. 26 plus 4 is 30. And finally, if I divide by -10, divide by -10, well, I have x equals -3. There we go. X equals -3. Now, here is what I would like for you to do. And Mr. Parsons is going to pause this video here in a moment. But what I would like for you to do is I would like for you to choose one of those equations, either this one or this one, plug -3 back into it, and try to figure out what y is going to be. So here's what I would like for you to do. Choose one of those equations, write it down, substitute in x equals -3, and see what you get. So Mr. Parsons, go ahead and pause the video now. All right, go ahead and check your answer here. I went ahead and did it both ways with both equations so people could check. But if you only chose one, that's fine. I just went ahead and showed both of them for you guys. So first off, if I would have done my first equation, plug in -3. Well, -3 goes in for x, and after solving, it looks like I subtracted 12. I end up with y equals -2. And cool thing about this choose your own adventure, if you would have chosen the second equation, cool stuff, you guys actually have the exact same answer. So our intersection here is going to be at the point -3, -2, and check it. If you're doing your homework tonight, check your work. You should end up with your intersection. So 6x minus 7y equals -4. And I am actually, when I do this, I'm going to plug in my original two equations in blue, you know, just in case I accidentally multiplied something wrong right off the bat. So 6x minus 7y equals -4. -4x minus 7y equals 26. And x equals -3, y equals -2. That is our solution. All right, moving on to example 3. All right, here's what I would like for you guys to do. Mr. Parsons is going to go ahead and pause this video here in a moment. But what I would like for you guys to do is look at this problem. And a 2x and an x do not cancel out. A 5 and a 2 do not cancel out. And a -1 and a 0 don't cancel out. So here's what I would like for you to talk about with a partner. I want you guys to discuss, what do you want to multiply? And go ahead and do that very, very first step. So multiply and see if you can go ahead and have something eliminate. So Mr. Parsons, go ahead and pause the video. and they're going to start on this. All right, here's what I saw. I saw that this x was super, super close to being able to cancel out with that 2x. So what I went ahead and did was multiply through. Negative 2 times x is negative 2x. Negative 2 times positive 2y is negative 4y. And then negative 2 times 0 is 0. And after I do that, I'm going to go ahead and cross this out just so I don't accidentally use that. So here is my next step. A 2x and a negative 2x, those cancel out. A 5y minus 4y, well, that's just a 1y. And then negative 1 minus 0 is simply negative 1. Well, that's pretty cool. We have y is equal to negative 1. Now, I'm going to go ahead for the sake of time. I'm just going to go ahead and choose one and go for it. So I'm going to go ahead and choose the first one. Let's go with that. 2x plus 5y equals negative 1. If my y value is negative 1, that is going to substitute in for y. All right, when I do this, 5 times negative 1 is negative 5 equals negative 1. Plus 5 plus 5, 2x equals 4. And finally, if I divide by 2, I get x equals positive 2. All right, so for my solution, I have y is equal to negative 1, x is equal to 2. So let's check it. All right, my original two equations were 2x plus 5y equals negative 1. And my second equation was x plus 2y equals 0. And yeah, sure enough, my intersection point is 2, negative 1. 2, negative 1. All right, now, last type of elimination here comes with example 4. Oof. All right, now example 4, we do not have anything that is perfectly, I can multiply one thing and it cancels out. I mean, I guess you can multiply by 3/4 up there or negative 4/3 down there. But I'm going to go ahead and show you how I would go about this problem. So I have a negative 7 and a positive 2. Now, the least common multiple of those, well, this would certainly look nice if this were a negative 14y and a positive 14y. Now, how do I get to that point? Well, if I want this top one to go from negative 7y to negative 14y, well, this would be multiplying by 2. And if I do that, distribute this out, boop, boop, boop. 2 times 4x is going to be 8x. 2 times negative 7 gets me negative 14y. That's cool. And then finally equals 2 times 10 gets me 20. All right, so I multiplied negative 7 by 2 to get to negative 14. Well, what would I need to multiply down here? Well, if I want this to be 14y, 2 times what gets me 14? Well, that would be 7. All right, and when I distribute this, 7 times 3x is 21x. 7 times 2y is 14y, just like we talked about. And finally, 7 times negative 7 equals negative 49. And now we are in the place where we can cancel out. We can start to combine some things. So Mr. Parsons is going to go ahead and pause the video now. And I want to see if you can complete this. What is x? What is y? And then go from there. So Mr. Parsons, go ahead and pause the video. All right, give yourself a nice little pat on the back if you ended up with this answer. So after canceling out, we ended up with 29x equals negative 29. That's an easy division. X equals negative 1. I went ahead and chose my top equation, but it does not matter. You could have chosen the bottom one as well. But when I went ahead and plugged in x equals negative 1, y got me negative 2. So give yourself a little pat on the back for getting that. So one final thing. Let's do it. Check our answers. 4x minus 7y equals 10. And finally, 3x plus 2y equals negative 7. And sure enough, negative 1, negative 2. So here is what your homework is going to be tonight. Here's what your homework is going to be tonight. So we have a few easy ones that are already set up for you. And what I would like for you guys to do is complete page 139 and 140 for homework tonight. I will be stopping by tomorrow for questions. Have a great day.